Now more than ever, I would like to say I am so grateful for public libraries like this. I would also like to thank staff members of Rural Recovery and the South County Recovery Center, Christine Scorpet, Wolf Valentin, Eric Reinhardt, and Justin Daly for their help and participation in this program. Eric will be speaking after me, followed by a question and answer session with the audience. Well, before I read some passages from my novel, I'd like to share a few thoughts on why I chose to take on the opioid crisis and war on drugs in a novel, particularly a thriller form. I started this book almost 20 years ago, during which time there were many fits and starts, to put it mildly. I was working a job and writing other things, but this book was a real challenge, so I put it in a drawer. The first impetus to write the book was a break-in at our house in Amherst and subsequent thefts in the area that alerted me to the drug trade in town in the so-called Happy Valley. I soon learned that nearby mill towns were harder hit. Factory closings, high unemployment, and proximity to interstate highways created ripe conditions for the drug trade to take root. I frequently drove through those towns on the way to kids' sports matches or nature conservation areas, but I had never really stopped to walk along their streets. What I learned is that distance isn't only measured in miles. After the break-in, I felt compelled to overcome that distance, and also morally I felt compelled to overcome that distance. I wanted to understand the inner workings of the drug trade to grasp what was unraveling around me. And as a novelist, I wanted to write a thriller about it. My two previous novels were thrillers, and I was more comfortable writing fast-paced plots than slow ones. So I created a small composite town, mill town called Stanton in this book, that is suffering from both economic depression and the opioid crisis. In retrospect, I suspect my choice to write a thriller also sprang from a need to distance myself from my characters and the harrowing situations I was about to put them through. If my plot rushed like a whitewater river, there would be less danger of drifting into an eddy where I might have time to truly feel their pain. For various reasons, my initial drafts just didn't work. And in 2011, feeling dispirited, I stuck the manuscript in a drawer. There are a couple other ones there too, and tried to forget about it. But my characters refused to die. A small corner of my imagination provided just enough oxygen for them to stay alive. 5 years later, they came out of hiding. Much had happened in the interim. The opioid crisis was now raging nationally and locally. The courts were prosecuting Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family for pushing OxyContin, but counterfeit pills and cheap heroin were taking its place. Overdose deaths in Massachusetts were surging, and the mill towns were especially afflicted. When fentanyl entered the picture, it quickly became the main cause of another surge in drug-related deaths that is, as you all know, continues today. So before dusting off my own manuscript, I studied more about the history of the war on drugs, and I read about how it criminalizes and stigmatizes people with substance use disorders, even as the supply of illegal drugs keeps growing. I came up with a plot that I thought was a bit over the top, but which now seems, unfortunately, prescient. It involves a federal drug operation called Snakehead that uses the false claim that Canada is a major source of fentanyl to the U.S. in a strategy to further militarize the northern border and local and state police. Today, as many of you probably know, the Trump administration is using such a claim as a rationale for imposing high tariffs on Canada and pressuring the country to beef up its borders. In truth, only a small percentage of fentanyl is smuggled over the northern border. While doing research, I also learned about impressive local and regional efforts to expand treatment and recovery services and reform the criminal justice system. I think we'll hear more about these impressive efforts today. In revising the book, I realized I needed to draw a sharper contrast between the war on drugs approach and community-based harm reduction. Already in my first draft, 2 local cops bravely break ranks with their bosses when the federal sting operation starts to endanger young people in Stanton. But more drug war action alone couldn't carry the plot. My real task, I came to see, was to let the characters reveal themselves, and in so doing, write their own story. I had to let go. And that has been a real lesson for me. I'm a social scientist by training, and to write novels, finally to let go and let the characters become themselves and to tell the story. That was a lesson of this book for me. In the process, the distance shrank between my characters and me. The personal stories grew deeper and darker, and the setting itself became more vivid. My eyes opened to the natural and architectural beauty of the mill towns. The prose took a cinematographic turn, including quicker cuts between the voices. When at the end of the novel, Stanton becomes a literal battlefield in the war on drugs, the violence from dueling sides threatens the community's safety. In the face of these challenges, who rises to the occasion and who falls, who is a hero and who is a villain, are questions asked of the reader. As in any page-turner, the book reaches a climax, but the characters, or most of them, live on, and the reader is left to ponder their fate. The thrill in this brand of thriller lies less in an ending that ties everything together than in being haunted by the characters afterwards. I am still haunted by them too, and by the subject matter that gave rise to this book. It forced me to go the distance, first in my imagination and then in real life. Shortly after I finished the manuscript, a young person very dear to our family died from a fentanyl overdose. So I think this crisis has affected so many people, and it ended up affecting me personally too. Now I'd like to read several passages to you from the book. But first, a quick guide to the main characters. The story is told through the alternating voices of four people: Laura Everett, a newspaper reporter and young widow in her mid-30s, her teenage son, Donnie, businesswoman Mimi Sullivan, who owns a building supply company, and her troubled daughter, Rebecca, nicknamed Royalty. Rebecca, Donnie, and Donnie's best friend, Ricky, not only become involved in a love triangle, but are swept up in the drug war, ultimately forcing their mothers to work together to keep them out of the crossfire. There are a number of other characters, too, including Laura's love interest, the naturalist Kate, Nate, her uncle Jack, a cop with a conscience who challenges the federal sting operation that is putting the community at risk, and a doctor involved in harm reduction efforts. So I'm going to read several passages from the book. The first one starts at the beginning, and here I also just want to point out that the natural setting is important in this book, not only to give people a sense of place, but also as a place of refuge for people who are facing the economic obstacles and challenges, and also the drug crisis. So it's kind of the juxtaposition between the beauty of the natural world and what's going on socially and economically is something I strive to do in this book. So we begin with Laura Everett, the reporter. On an evening in late April, Laura Everett drives straight from her job at the Stanton Gazette to the old elementary school a few miles away. She pulls into the deserted parking lot, turns off the ignition, and reaches for her cell to check messages. After giving up smoking, she needs something to do with her nervous energy. But unlike cigarettes, the phone doesn't give her any pleasure. 9 times out of 10, the message is from her son Donnie, and he's in trouble again. She checks the time, 6:25 p.m. The other birders will arrive in a few minutes. These outings are the one thing she looks forward to every week. It's the art of waiting she appreciates, the way their guide, Nate Waterman, has them stand quietly in forests and fields, gazing up, ears keen, binoculars at the ready, patience rewarded by the sudden bird call or fluttering of wings. And as she's honest with herself, she just likes being in Nate's presence. Maybe something's growing between them. She can't quite tell. There is romance in this book, too, I'm happy to say. By the time Nate arrives in his truck, 6 cars have assembled. He's wearing his typical uniform of an old bomber jacket, flannel shirt, and corduroy pants with ridges worn down at the knees. He isn't classically handsome. His torso is too long for his short legs, and his face is scarred from adolescent acne, but he has fine blue eyes. He used to be much talked about and pursued by the area's single women, but as far as Laura knows, no one succeeded in getting him to bed. Leaning against the side of the truck, he begins describing the purpose of the evening's trip to see the dance of the American woodcock. He explains how at dusk in mating season the male woodcock calls repeatedly and then rises and circles high into the air, still whistling, until it flies suddenly back to earth. It sounds more dramatic than what you'll actually be able to see with your naked eye, Nate advises. Unfortunately, it will be getting dark, so you'll have to use your imaginations as well as your binoculars. Nate drives west out of town where a few box stores, Walmart, Stop and Shop, Family Dollar, look less than splendid in their isolation. There isn't enough economic activity in Stanton for a proper mall. The town hangs by the single thread of the diamond tool and die factory, and the only growth industry is drugs. He parks and the group crosses a meadow and then enters a path into the brush. A few mosquitoes buzz around Laura's head, but it's too cold for them to bite. The sun is just sunk below the horizon and pink light suffuses the evening mist. They reach a clearing where they stand in a semicircle. Nate tilts his head and raises a finger. Hear that? From about 30 feet away in the brush comes the nasal peent of a woodcock. It'll take off soon, he whispers. In the dusky sky, the bird appears as a dark speck, a piece of leaf defying gravity and spinning upward higher and higher. Laura catches it in her vision, then loses it, then catches it again on its descent as it chirps melodically before it plummets to the ground. A few people complain they couldn't see or hear it. Wait a minute and you'll have another chance, Nate tells the group. Now listen. What they hear instead is the ring of Laura's cell. It's the signal that Donnie uses. How stupid, she thinks. She forgot to mute it, a major strike against her. She walks away from the group, fumbling at her purse until she finds the phone. What do you want, Donnie? She asks irritably. Mrs. Everett, a woman says. Yes, she replies cautiously. I'm calling from the hospital on your son's phone. Don't worry, he's going to be all right. The doctors are just stitching up a minor wound in his side. What happened? She asked, barely able to control the shaking in her voice. He was stabbed superficially in a fight. The boy he was with is in worse shape. Is it Ricky Gillen? We're not at liberty to give out his name. Adrenaline hits as she drives to the hospital. Parked by the emergency entrance is a police car that looks like Uncle Jack's. Sure enough, he's waiting in the lobby for her, feeding coins into the soda machine. The chief wanted to send Tommy, Jack says, but he insisted on coming instead. She thanks him. Tommy is mean, combative, and on the make, the opposite of a good neighborhood cop like Jack. Donnie's okay, he assures her. Go see him, and then I want to talk to you. Is Ricky okay? It is Ricky, isn't it? He nods jadedly. Of course it's Ricky. They transferred him to Worcester by ambulance. He needs some surgery, but he's not in critical condition. She finds Donnie in a cubicle off the emergency room, hooked to an IV and so drowsy from painkillers he's barely aware of her presence. She stays with him until he falls back to sleep and then returns to the lobby. Jack accompanies her to her car where they sit inside in the streetlight's sallow glow. I don't know how much you know about the fight, he begins. Nothing, she says, holding her hands on the steering wheel as if she's driving. It's beyond what we've seen before. Because of the knives? We've seen knives before. And what do you mean? We think Ricky's being recruited by a gang. You're kidding. Afraid not. Some members of a Boston gang have been checking out Stanton, looking to move some of their operations outside the city to escape the heat. First step is to recruit young kids like Ricky. That's trouble enough, but there's a rival gang in Springfield that doesn't like them intruding on their territory. That's what the fight was about. Who controls the drug corridors up to the New Hampshire and Vermont borders? The battle starts by culling the weak. Ricky would be dead if Donnie hadn't been there to provide some diversion. What happens now? Maybe make an arrest or two, but only if the Springfield police feel like cooperating. They've got bigger fish to fry than a knife fight 40 miles away in Stanton. And the gang members here? We're working on it. That's all I can say. What should I do about Donnie, Jack? I want to talk to him. I'll come around to the house tomorrow after he gets out of the hospital. No charges? Not this time. He didn't do anything except to try to protect his friend. That's not a crime, but he's marked now on their radar screen. Do you understand that, Laura? We've just entered a whole new ball game, and it's a lot more dangerous. Tell him that for me, will you? Then we shift to Donnie's voice. Donnie opens his eyes. His mom's gone. She must have left when he fell asleep. Blue lights blink, the IV machine clicks, but they make him feel even more alone. He stretches his left leg just a little bit. The wound is on the right, and he doesn't want to feel it. He wants it to be outside his body, not inside. He never wants to see his own blood again or touch it. Touching it was the worst thing. His shirt was soaked with it. He wants to forget, but can't. Every time he wakes up, the scene plays in his head like he shot a video of it. Ricky taunts the guy, threatening him with a knife. Donnie just wants to run, so he shouts for Ricky to follow. But then Ricky's down on the ground bleeding, and the guy goes to stab him again. Donnie rushes over and lands a punch, but not hard enough. The guy still has the knife in his hand. He slashes at Donnie while the other two punks yell something like, "Let's get the hell out of here." After they leave, Donnie crawls over to Ricky and dials 911, and then the screen goes dark. They say he was passed out when the ambulance came. Let's get the hell out of here. But what if they're still around? What if they come looking for him, talk their way into the hospital? Why did his mom leave? She never gets when he needs her, and when he doesn't. His dad would have known to stay all night. Well, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over a passage of the young Rebecca, nicknamed Royalty, who gets involved. She's been involved with Donnie's friend Ricky, and then she gets involved with Donnie, and then she gets involved with drugs. And she, throughout the story, she kind of declines and gets, more involved in taking heroin. So things are reaching, this now is about a little over halfway through the book, and things are starting to reach kind of a crisis level, and there's a sense of danger and that the children are at risk, and especially Donnie is at risk too, even though Donnie smokes pot but nothing else, but Ricky kind of draws him into trying to protect or help save Rebecca. The two boys get very involved in that. After parking on the access road, Laura takes a path toward Jack's fishing shack on the Diamond River. He called last night. This is Uncle Jack again, the cop. He called last night and asked her to meet him there this morning. In January, a bad ice storm left behind a swath of cracked trees and broken limbs here, and although new seedlings are taking root, the forest still looks wounded and incomplete. She finishes a cigarette and grinds it out with her shoe. The butt looks so ugly on the path, like the larva of a giant grub. She hates herself for smoking again, but that's the point, to hate herself instead of Donnie for messing up her life. Oh, there's plenty to hate him for, but a mother isn't allowed to hate her son. What a pipe dream to think things could work out with Nate. If she'd been home with Donnie those nights she was with Nate, maybe none of this trouble would have happened. As she turns a corner, the shack comes into view, the mossy roof making it seem like an extension of the forest. Jack's fishing on the dock, so she joins them there. Not bothering to get up, Roxy the dog lets out one half-hearted bark and thumps her tail when Laura calls her name. The sun is warm enough that she sheds her sweater and drapes it over the back of a weathered Adirondack chair. Jack's wearing shorts and a Boston Celtics t-shirt. The team's in the playoffs this year. Well, they were. Catch anything yet? She asks as she sits down. She's never liked only a plastic bag, Jack says. He gestures inside the shack. There's beer and soda in the cooler if you want. She's never liked going into the shack with its smell of mildew and mouse droppings, but she obeys. Roxy gets up to accompany her, hoping for a treat. The dog moves slowly, one of her back legs dragging. Laura retrieves 2 Miller Lights from the cooler, then feeds Roxy a couple of pretzels. Back on the dock, Jack's pulling a fish off the line. Trout, he announces, but too small, under the limit. He thrusts its slippery body back into the water, then puts down the rod and snaps open the beer. Shit, he says, and she's unclear whether he's cursing the size of the fish, the insipid beer, or her. I don't know if I can take it anymore. Take what? They're pushing me out, Laura. Want me to retire next month. The chief called me into the office on Friday to offer me a severance package. He's just the messenger. I can tell he feels bad. They're not including me in meetings anymore. I guess I criticized Operation Snakehead one too many times. When she asks what he'll do, he says he'll refuse the offer. He's retiring at the end of the year, and until then he'll just be a royal pain in their collective asses. Maybe you could write something for the paper about the war on drugs, she suggests. Go out in glory. Frank doesn't know about it, but I'm planning on doing a whole series on the opioid crisis. Jack laughs. They'd shoot me first. No, really. I'm sworn to secrecy, Laura. Remember that? I shouldn't have told you anything about what's going on. You could write something generic. Like what? Like it's a war without end, bust one network and there's another to take its place that's usually worse? Like what happened with the Iraq war and ISIS? We're a country that doesn't know how to do wars anymore, so we should just stop, cut our losses. The drug supply will always be there. It's about cutting demand and getting people into treatment, real treatment. The harm reduction people around here want to set up supervised consumption sites, and why not? They work well in Canada. I'll support anything that works. We were making so much progress here on these issues before Snakehead moved in. You could write that. Yeah, sure. I'd help you. You don't understand, do you? The only reason I'm not bolting out the door with a severance package is I need to stick around to help you and Donnie and Ricky and any other kids getting trapped in this bullshit. They may not invite me to meetings, but I keep my ear to the ground. If I start writing anything, I'll be totally cut out. You're not going to like this, he continues, but I called your sister Nina this morning and told her Donnie's at risk. She agreed to take him as soon as school's out, and then I bought him an airplane ticket. I'm forwarding it to you. How dare he call Nina without consulting her first, she thinks. He knows their relationship is fraught. What exactly did you tell her, she demands, bristling. That you're too proud and embarrassed to ask for help, he responds calmly, and that Donnie is in serious trouble and needs to get out of here this summer. I can't believe you did that. What else was I supposed to do, Laura? Sit around and watch you procrastinate when I know all that I know? I kept hearing your dad's voice in my ear. Laura's stubborn. She holds on too long. Sometimes she needs a push. Push her for me when I'm gone, will you, Jack? He said that in so many words. He was stubborn, too. That's why he understood you. You're holding on to an old idea of Donnie that you have to let go, Laura. You still see him as a little boy that you can protect because you're his mom. It ends up being selfish because you don't let other people help him. I know this sounds harsh, but you're not enough for him anymore. It's going to take all of us who care about him. I'm going to end there. And in a way, this book is about the process of Laura coming to action and joining with two other mothers really to take action. So it's about also kind of her self-empowerment through this painful process. So I'm going to leave it here and invite Eric up and then to speak and to give us a sense of the real reality around here. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Hi, I'm Eric. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I'm also an intern for a recovery coach at the South County Recovery Center in Great Barrington. And I'm a member there and a volunteer. And it was great last week or a couple of weeks ago. Christine asked if I might read this book by Betsy and explained that it was on the opioid crisis. But I didn't catch that it was suspense, and it really drew me in from the very first. Like I was telling Betsy earlier, it was like being a fly on the wall and watching as these scenes went, very tautly, very tightly from one to the next. And, they call it a page turner for a reason. It really is a page turner. And I rarely do this, but I had to highlight a section and ask Betsy if I might read from it to introduce what we do at South County Recovery Center. This is where Uncle Jack has he has to come in and explain a sad turn of events. And so I'll just say, Uncle Jack clears his throat and starts to speak. I'm sorry I have to be here this morning to give you some sad news. He pauses, looking out over the audience, and Donnie wonders if Jack can see him. Yesterday, a high school student in Orange died of a drug overdose. I'm not at liberty yet to give her name. Her friend survived. Both received Narcan after the police found them passed out in a car parked near the Diamond River. The pills they took appeared to have been mixed with fentanyl. Dr. Golden will tell you more about that. Emergency personnel tried hard to save the girl's life, but it was too late. We have reports from other towns in the region that this isn't an isolated situation. A man died in Brattleboro 2 days ago from what looks like the same batch of pills. In response, the Stanton police have set up a new Facebook page where you can get all the latest information and warnings about what drugs are out there. These pills look like real prescription ones. The streets. Yeah. What South County Recovery Center is involved in is exactly this. I mean, we're trying to become sort of a handshake between the community, the first responders, the hospitals, and help them understand more deeply what addiction and recovery look like, what the faces of addiction and recovery look like, and how we're dealing with it as a society. We're not, essentially. We're kind of looking in another way, and there is stigma involved that really needs to be educated out. So we go to places like Fairview and up to a Pride Day in Pittsfield, and we table and we represent the faces of recovery. I normally tell my story down at Fairview of I'm 17 years in recovery from alcohol, and I speak to the nurses there like, and another fellow, Wolf, speaks to them like, this is, he says, imagine if it were your own daughter or son or sister or brother, and put yourself in those shoes. Then you can see without stigma. Then you can see that this is just a person going through a disease. And it's because it's so stigmatized and misunderstood, it sort of gets swept under the rug in many cases. Like I heard a story that happened in Pittsfield where people were using in the library, and they wouldn't call the police because they didn't want it to hit the papers that people were using in the library. It's like you have to put these things together, and in order to help those people that are struggling and still using, and also the education to the addicts out there, the users of the street drugs. It's now become epidemic that fentanyl is always in something that's being used, as well as xylazine and other additives that can kill. I mean, Narcan has no effect on xylazine, so they're just one-upping it, and so we try to do like a weekly or a bi-weekly sort of report on what's been tested, because you can go into test centers with micro dose of whatever it is that you're using and get it tested to see what's in it. And then that report goes to all the recovery centers, which I'm so happy to say that Massachusetts, I think, has now 40 39
BSAS, but there's more recovery centers that aren't funded by BSAS.
that aren't funded by BSAS. I mean,
We're
that's
the leader, for sure.
more than any in the nation, and
Yeah, I would say.
it's it really is it's been a wonderful. I just started working there as an intern, and it's been an eye-opening and wonderful experience to grow with this community of people who are struggling on different levels and meeting them at the level they're at and saying, what can we do to help? We have resources available. There's hospitals, there's Keenan House, there's beds, there's recovery out there at any level that they want to start it. And so we try to engage their imagination and their willingness and wantingness to, get to a new place in their life so that they can find hope again. And it's really been remarkable to see some of the changes and be a part of it. I love that we represent in places like Pittsfield and during Pride, and give out Narcan kits. We had, in the rain last weekend, Saturday, 1,000 people going by our tent, and people picking up Narcan kits and going, oh, great, the neighborhood I'm in, this is what I've been looking for, So it's everyone from concerned, neighbors to, people who are in the mix. But it's so important that we humanize. This is what I love about this book. We need to humanize. We need to put a face on recovery and addiction and drug use and see that it's not hopeless and it's not a thing to be swept under the rug. That it's something, if we embrace, we can move forward with. We can make a difference, which is all I ever wanted to do. I wanted to. I'm a musician too. I'm a singer-songwriter, and to just bring some light to what is, feels very dark at times. Our world can be very challenging, and I see the youth looking at people and shaking their heads like, well, why should I care? And I think there's reason to reinforce the hope. There's reason to offer our hand out and say, hey, this is possible. Look what's possible. So the other thing that I just wanted to end with, if I can find it. My highlighting is not highlighting. When Dr. Golden, who speaks to a group of the kids, it says, when Dr. Golden starts his talk, Donnie tries to focus, but finds the accompanying PowerPoint too upsetting to look at, especially the close-up photos of young people who have overdosed. A fentanyl overdose causes your body to go rigid, the doctor says, and you look like a statue with eyes open, jaw and fists clenched. The doctor describes the signs that someone is using and where to get help for them or yourself. Another Facebook page is projected on the screen. Everyone wants to protect them, it seems. They don't get that there's no protection because we're all just floating around, and whether or not you make it back to shore isn't about knowing how to swim. It's about luck. His dad died, so he's unlucky, but the weed helps him floating. Heroin and fentanyl sink you. That's what the doctor should say. Kids could understand that, because as long as you're floating around, you just might make it. A wave could wash you in, or a girl like Rebecca, your luck can turn. You can float together for a while. I love that stark difference between, fentanyl can sink you. It's nasty, it's quick, and it will take you down. But if the kids just sort of stick together and find each other and talk about stuff, and if we can offer more places like that, like our recovery center, to hang out. Lots of times we have just that happening in our area. We have just people coming in and talking with recovery coaches, what to do next, where to go for this, just life stuff, what's happening with them. And I'm really proud of what we do. I'm really happy to be here today. So thank you.
I'll make a comment about how hard it is to deal with drugs. And my background is I was in education as a college administrator. And the hardest call of my life probably was to call a mother whose daughter was on Main Street, not here, but in another town. And she was panhandling to get money for drugs. And I thought, it was the worst call of my life to call this mother and say, you've got to come and find and take your daughter out of here because this is what's happening. And the best news is that it took a while. The mother came immediately, but the daughter did recover, and she's doing terrific. She's a well-educated young woman, and she's got a good job and all. But I think part of it is, in the beginning at least, when parents see there's any indication of drugs, they don't want to deal because it's hard to admit. And then the other hard thing is, even when you want to help somebody, you don't know where to get that help. So, however you can make it so that if somebody calls and is looking for help, that this is now a while since I've been working, so it may be that there's better access. But that was the hardest thing, to say, okay, wait a minute, it's going to take me a little bit to get you some help. When a person is looking for help, they need access right away. Because by the time you find them help, they've already found some more drugs, and they decide that they don't need that help any longer. So that would be my one thing, that somehow to make the people in the communities aware that if somebody needs help, where do you go? Who should you call first? How can I help somebody? I'm the neighbor or whatever, but I'd like to say something, or say, look, it's hard to say that to either the parent or the parent looking for help, or the person, or the young person looking for help. But you have to have that ability to give direction right away.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I'm just going to move this.
By the way, I couldn't see your face all the time. So I think I can just, yeah.
Got it? If I can just speak to that, the education piece that the South County Recovery Center is involved in is trying to do that, and going to Fairview and speaking to nurses, first responders, so that they can, when they see somebody come into the ER who's in need, they can say, by the way, there is this place in town right here for you to go after your crisis is over, and you can seek help, resources, trying to get education, and to the mothers and the sisters and the brothers. Yeah, it is about a discussion that needs to be opened. And I love that your book opens the discussion.
Thank you. Yeah.
You mentioned you were long-term recovery instead of recovering alcoholic. Are you associated with the Patrick Kennedy, the disc that he put out on long-term recovery?
I'm unfamiliar with it.
Oh my gosh, we have it at the library.
Oh, fantastic.
It's fantastic. I have 40 years of sobriety, June 26th.
Yeah, I celebrated 17 in April, so
Yeah.
I never thought I'd say that.
Well, I never thought I'd make 40 years.
Yeah, no kidding.
Which is amazing. But so recovery is not what it used to be. I came from New Orleans, and in Louisiana back in, what was it, in 85 to 90, recovery exploded there. In Lafayette, Louisiana, New Orleans, all kinds of treatment centers. We had 6 treatment centers in Lafayette. And of course, insurance paid for it, the 30-day treatment center. And that is all gone now. You know, so the crisis is just incredible.
Yeah, sadly, there's an ebb and flow to that whole scene, and Massachusetts is experiencing a blossom and a real, whereas other states are lost.
Yeah. I mean, because before it was AA, and it was a character defect to be an alcoholic. It wasn't a disease. In fact, I had to work for people and later convince them that yes, it is. It is a medical issue, not a character defect.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've come a long way in describing it. But services, where do they go for a meeting anymore? You're doing that in Great Barrington?
We are.
We sure are. Meetings, events, programming, things that aren't associated with recovery, just fun stuff to do.
Paintball.
I encourage you to check out our calendar.
Okay.
Well,
I've been waiting to meet you guys.
Yeah.
Well, I do worry in this current moment with public health funding cuts, that we're experiencing, certainly at the federal level, that could trickle down to states, even states that try to do the right thing, like Massachusetts. So I think it's also really important at this moment that community members speak out in support of recovery centers, in support of like Narcan, being available, and it's just a moment, and also that's a way that one can destigmatize too, and the importance. This is important to your community, to your community's health, to your own kids, to your, to everybody, and so important. I think right now it's always important, but really important right now because we might face a potential crisis in funding. I worry about that anyway.
Do you do any fundraising?
We haven't in the past, but I think some of our members, so we're a peer support recovery center, which means we're run by peers. The staff's only there to be as stewards to help them do whatever they want to do with the center. And we've had some members interested in doing different fundraisers. We have our Smash the Stigma event every September because it's Recovery Month. But that was less of a fundraiser and more to spread awareness. So we have a lot of resource tabling, recovery vendors, food, speakers, live music. It's a family-friendly event, so we have a lot of kids activities, fun stuff. This year it's September 20th.
And don't miss it. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
So a couple of years I had surgery for an abdominal hernia. So they put me under, and then the next day when they released me, they sent me home, and it was with one of those medicines I think that you admit I had heard was addictive. And so I didn't take any of it. I went back and everything was fine. But I took the medication because I wasn't in pain, so I took it back. And they said, "Oh, we can't take that." And I said, "Well, what do I do?" So I had to take it back home. I took it to the police department. Police department took me down to the basement. I couldn't open the thing, and then they poured it out. And I just thought, what if I had needed that? That I was really very, very lucky, but they wouldn't even touch it. And I just thought, so I was really lucky, and I thought, you know, what is this? And if I had needed it, maybe I would be in that place of needing another recovery. But I didn't think it was handled very well.
No,
Yeah.
we are bumbling as a society about that, especially when it comes to illness. I just went through a kidney stone thing, and the pain was so intense that the ER, one of the ER attendants gave me morphine. I had to put on my thing afterwards, do not give me morphine. I was severely allergic. I had such a bad reaction. I was sick for 4 hours from it. They were trying to do their best to keep me comfortable, and that, you know, it's this give and take. We have to sort of open it up to be able to have discussions like this and learn from those things, you know. We're in a good spot, I think, though. The Berkshires is a real, it's high on the learning curve.
That's great.
Well, what about the drug epidemic and the kids and all the drug centers here? How are they actually helping people get off? Or, I mean, is the theory that you're never going to get off of this?
No. So we meet them at the level they're at. Should a kid come in and want to talk about that, or a phone call, and then we ask them to come in, and in that interview we ask them what are their goals, you know, what do they want, because in order for anything to happen, their hand has to be out first. If you grab somebody off the street, it's like an intervention that, you know, 9 out of 10 times will fail. That's why most of what AA offers has worked so well, because it's suggested. It's not demanded of anyone that you can only recover this way, although there are some proponents of it that don't. But what I like about the recovery center is that we're trained to interview and to see where that person is at with their drug use and what their next steps want to be. So they take themselves out of the picture. We offer resources.
And what about drugs coming in from out of the area? Are the police working with that too? Because
yeah, that's a police thing. It's crazy out there on the streets. I fortunately have not seen that, only the results.
I know doctors were way overprescribing a few years
Yeah.
back, which was another problem.
And we have a program within BSAS that is a cohort program where people like Justin or myself will go out and sort of see where the people on the streets are. So if there's somebody who looks like, you know, they need help, we'll have a kit that we can offer them that includes Narcan and like anything,
personal hygiene,
blanket, hygiene, yeah, winter jackets in the winter, raincoats.
If they're out in the elements, some
Right.
people are unhoused out.
Unhoused.
So we try to give them just what they need and see what those needs are, so we can either refer them to resources in our community or go back to these resources and say, hey, you know what, we don't really need this anymore, we're seeing this now.
Are you funded for that? Is there a fund or?
Yeah, so we are primarily funded by the state.
Uh-huh.
What Eric is speaking of is through the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, and I believe some of that is federal funding, but I'm not as familiar with their funding sources.
Mhm.
Other questions, comments? Happy to.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. And thank you, Eric.